Welcome to Agency Bytes, a podcast for agency owners, hosted by agency veteran and coach Steve Guberman. Agency Bytes is a podcast focused on delivering actionable agency information from agency experts in about 25 minutes. Why 25 minutes? Because who has the attention span for much more these days? And you can squeeze in a listen between meetings with time for a bathroom break or coffee refill before your next meeting.
This episode of Agency Bytes is brought to you by Ignition, the platform agencies use to stop chasing invoices, kill scope creep, and get paid on time every time. With branded proposals and automated billing and payments all in one place, Ignition helps you boost cash flow and scale without the admin chaos. Start getting paid on time at ignitionapp.com. Use code OUTSIGHT25 to save 50% off on monthly Pro or Pro Plus plans.
Welcome to Agency Bytes. I'm your host, Steve Guberman from Agency Outsight, where I coach agency owners to build the business of their dreams. This week on Agency Bytes, I am joined by Maiya Holliday, CEO and founder of Mangrove Web development. Maiya is a self-taught coder turned creative leader who's built more than 200 websites for change makers and proven and purpose-driven organizations. Under her leadership, Mangrove became a certified B Corp back in 2016, and she's been a champion for businesses that put people, planet, purpose, and equity at the core ever since. And I'm super thrilled to have you here. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. Good to be here. Thanks, Steve.
So, Mangrove, you recently made a transformation, new leadership. Walk us through kind of some of the evolution of the agency since launch and women-owned status and kind of where you guys are today and some of these key moments that you've experienced.
Yeah, so I'll give you the short but complete history. Started just myself traveling around with my laptop, and I was a developer and just kind of doing little side jobs here and there, and figuring out a way into this new career that I decided that I had some business learning about, and then, you know, over the years, hired a project manager and a couple other devs, specifically grabbed another female developer who was one in a needle in a haystack, I guess, at the time. And one of the first pivots in the business was when I had my first son, who's now 8, and I sort of had to build in my own maternity leave. I was still working as a sole proprietor, so we ended up doubling at the time. We went from 3 to 6 people. That's when I actually stopped doing client work and coding and shifted more to just working on the business instead of in the business. And we became a B Corp around that time as well in 2016. I always had this purpose-driven aspect of our business. I actually studied international development and thought I was going to go into some sort of public health or public policy. Realized I was much better at coding and creating websites and doing technical things, and then wanted to apply that back into supporting organizations doing progressive things. And so B Corp certification really solidified that for me. The more I read about it and learned about it, the more it just fit and created this like scaffolding for what I already saw our business doing. And it kind of opened up a lot of different pathways to how we could build out the business. Like, I got certified at a time when I was still the sole owner and sole proprietor, and we didn't have any other full-time employees. So that really put the structure in place as we grew as an organization. And then we kind of steadily grew over the next couple of years. And then in 2022, we merged with another B Corp agency in Canada that had a 6-person design team. At the time, we were 18 people, about 8 full-time and 10 kind of half-time contractors. And we merged with Mangrove Web, which is a fellow B Corp who we had partnered with for a number of years, and established a headquarters in Canada. I don't recommend paying taxes in 2 countries if you can avoid it, but
Sure.
It's great to have a Canadian entity. And we have a lot of great Canadian clients, and we have a couple full-timers there. And my business partner now, Andrew, is our creative director. He was running Mangrove Web prior, and it's just a really great alignment of a more design-led agency and a more dev-focused agency coming together. So at one point in time, we were 24 people. Now we're about 15, and we've gone through all the iterations and all the motions over the past 16 years now, and settled out where we are.
I didn't realize. So I knew there was an alignment in culture and client and vision and things like that in the two agencies. I didn't realize there was such an alignment in the names Mangrove and Overboard.
Yeah.
And it's an easy merge.
I'm doing some little graphics and inside memes during that time.
I can't believe you didn't rename it as Mangrove Board or something like that.
That is about the 10th time I've heard that, actually.
Man, I thought it was so original.
I know.
Talk about kind of your process in becoming certified B Corp, and like as you grew, did those requirements shift for you? Like I know you said it opened up a lot of doors for you, but as a 1-person shop versus a 10 and 16-person shop, like how does that impact vary, and how do the requirements change?
Yeah. So when we first got certified, one of actually the best pieces of advice I got that I always try to pass along is that the certification process can be pretty daunting. It's relatively rigorous, depends on the size of your organization, but even if you're a 1-person organization, there's a lot to move through. And so one of the best ways to approach it is there's the impact assessment. It's called the B Corp Impact Assessment. You can just Google it, and you can sign up, you can create an account, you can start going through it. Even if you're not ready to become a B Corp, or you're not fully on board, or you're just curious, whatever, you can go through and you can like mark things off and kind of start going through the assessment and almost just like do a trial run of where you would land, and then see where you land and kind of liberally say yes to certain things, where you can flag certain things to come back to, and just see where you end up. They've made a huge shift in the assessment and the way that they're sort of certifying with the latest impact report. But at the time, or the certification process, at the time that we got certified, the threshold was to get 80 points. And, I think the highest B Corp at the time was maybe 140 points, but it's a pretty wide range. And there's a lot of things that are like 0.25 points and are hard earned. And so, the first time we did, I think we got 40 points or something. And then I went back through and I marked things like, okay, we don't have a child labor policy. We don't have a breastfeeding policy. We don't do carbon offsets. Like those are all things we can do. We can move our bank to a more responsible bank. I had never really considered that as an impactful move. And so then I went back and started doing those things. Then I went back through, answered yes to those things, kind of worked our way up. And so when we first certified, we had, I think, 80.5 points at the threshold of 80 to certify. So
just really made us perfect.
Just squeaked by, but and then over time we've there's quite a bit of work of just maintaining your score. I mean, it's really a big exercise in accountability and in ensuring that you're referencing your goals and your commitments, and that you're actually building that into your practices. But a lot of it becomes second nature. It's like it's changed the way that we hire, so that we're always like the way we write up job descriptions, so that we are sort of open and welcoming to a more diverse talent pool. It's where we post things, how we run our hiring process. We think through like which vendors we work with, which partners we work with, making sure we're connected to diverse perspectives and diverse input, and ensuring, and it's solidifying what we've kind of always done, but working with fellow purpose-driven clients and making sure that we're thoughtful about just about every different touch point of the organization, and making sure that there's nothing that feels it's going against the grain of our values, I guess. And then there's a lot of things that are a real stretch that we have to like keep pushing ourselves to improve upon. And there's, especially in the last couple years, as speaking to fellow agency owners, it's been a really tough couple years in the agency world. And so sometimes there's like a real push and pull of aligning with our B Corp commitments, and not so much that there's like a polarity, but there's just where's my attention and time going? Is it going towards furthering our impact, or is it going towards keeping the business viable and afloat? And I don't have like an answer or summary, but I just want to call that out as like a real aspect of like what we've experienced over the last couple of years, and just like continuing to create intention around like following our B Corp values, recertifying. We've recertified twice now. Our next one's coming up next year. And just like this kind of continued re-engagement. But it's really meaningful because it's really aligned with what we already wanted to be doing. The last thing I'll say about it is like I wouldn't pursue B Corp certification just to sort of open doors or get work, or as like a sort of business strategy, I guess, unless it's really meaningful beyond that to you. Because it's just maybe like 5 or 10 years ago, when we first got certified, which was in 2016, there were a lot less agencies, so it did have more value as a differentiator. There's a ton of B Corp agencies now, and it's not as much of a marketing, or like it's not as much of a differentiator anymore. Right. And so and it's a lot of work. So only do it if it really aligns with what you already believe in, what you already want to be doing, and like, you know, there's advantages to it, but it's not worth it if it's not really at the heart of what you're doing.
Manual billing, late payments, scope creep. If your agency's revenue is leaking, Ignition can help. It automates proposals, billing, and payments in one platform, so you close deals faster and spend less time chasing money. Simplify billing and get paid faster at ignitionapp.com. Use code OUTSIGHT25 to save 50% off on monthly Pro or Pro Plus plans.
Well, I was going to ask that because it has become a more crowded space, both the agency that's focused on purpose-driven clients, but also becoming B certified, you know, in the past, like you said, 5-ish years, become far more crowded. And so have they tightened up the requirements, and how have you seen as it's got more crowded, have you seen that impact your competition levels?
In terms of tightening the requirements, the new requirements are different and stricter in certain ways. There's certain things that are required where they used to be sort of optional. You could grab points from different areas, whereas now there are certain things that are required. I don't know. I haven't gone through it in detail because our certification is coming up next year, and I'm just starting to look at it because I was plenty busy with other things the last year and a half. But
what's the frequency of recertification? Is it every 4 years?
Yeah. So we certified right before they changed last time, and then I kind of willfully ignored the new standards for a little while so I could catch my breath. But I would say, I don't think there's any need to actually make the certification more rigid in order to make it more exclusive, if you will. I mean, the more organizations that become B Corps, the better. Like we're moving towards this triple bottom line, purpose driven, corporate accountability, and that's good for everybody. But there's no reason to sort of like weed people out, but we still, as long as the certification is still has its like clout and is really solid and respected, which I think it is. It's not easy to do. But in terms of the competition, I mean, there's so much competition in the agency space regardless right now. Like the post-pandemic bubble bursting of so much work, and then new agencies, new micro agencies coming out, people moving remote. Like we've been remote since I started because I was traveling around. So we've been remote since 2009, but there's a a lot of new organizations that are realizing, oh, hey, we can have different talent pools from all over the place, maybe be able to charge a little bit less by shifting how many full-timers we have or how many in-house people we have or the kind of our overhead costs or whatever. And so I don't think the B Corp thing is really like having any more impact in the grand scheme of the agency landscape right now. Like there just is a lot of competition and you got to figure it out. But I would, the more the merrier for, people actually committing to becoming a B Corp. Like that's great.
Yeah, it just makes for a better world all around, and agencies or businesses in general operating, according to a certain set of guidelines, and all for that. Now, which came first, the focusing on nonprofits? I know you're leaning more into that now, or the Be Certified, or were they just both naturally part of your kind of woven fabric of the agency from the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the working with nonprofits came first. I actually worked in a nonprofit as a program coordinator for a kind of volunteer vacation organization doing trips to Tanzania. And I ended up doing a website for a guy who was building a dam in his village there and just did a little separate webpage with a PayPal link. And I realized like, well, that's a hell of a lot more effective than anything else I've done all week, like teaching volunteers how to teach HIV/AIDS education in Swahili is like a little convoluted. And so that really clicked with me. And so I came out of that nonprofit space originally, and just naturally over time, we've worked with a lot of nonprofits and, the B Corp alignment. The B Corp alignment was really nice because it adds in the for-profit space with clarity around who is aligned with our values there. So, but yeah, that nonprofit piece has been there since the early days. Those were like my late night Googling, building things and tables and Dreamweaver projects back in the early days.
Oh, you're bringing me back memory lane. I love it. Yeah, Photoshop layers and Dreamweaver.
Tables or CSS, sure, but
Yeah, I love that. I do think so. A lot of agencies will say we do nonprofit because we'll do it for free or a discount, but we're really focused on whatever fintech or consumer blah 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 or whatever, and nonprofit is like their kind of badge of we do good things for good people. But agencies like yours that lean into it as like purpose driven, planet driven, good for the people, etc. kind of clients, that's your core focus. You're not doing banking and anything else. And so the mindset of, well, if it's nonprofit, how do we build a business around businesses that don't have a lot of money? And you've done this successfully now for quite a while, and you're leaning deeper into it. I mean, talk about that mindset and path forward for you.
Yeah, I mean, we do have some for-profit companies. We do have some anchor clients, but over 85% of our revenue comes from what we consider purpose-driven or mission-driven organizations, nonprofits, or BIPOC or women-owned businesses. And those parameters are aligned with how the B Corp assessment defines them. But we don't do any like really small organization sites or really small sites. Usually our sites start around like 25 or 30K and are and I say that because I think there's a lot of like really small nonprofits that are kind of scraping things together, and we've done that before of kind of a little build here, a little bit there, just get someone up and off the ground. And that's kind of how I got my start as a freelancer. But we're doing a lot more projects now where there's actually typically like a full RFP for the project. There's a decent budget allocated. It's really aligned with vital goals of the organization to fundraise or for stakeholder alignment and engagement for it's tied really directly to their revenue. And so the kind of sites we're doing are really supporting nonprofits and foundations and other purpose-driven organizations to actually like further the mission and impact of the organization, but also to solidify different revenue streams. And there's a lot of, there's still a lot of organizations out there who really heavily depend on their website or are underutilizing their website in order to support their work. And, the reason we're called Mangrove is because the Mangrove root system supports this whole like ecosystem of things to grow and live and thrive within this root structure. And I really see like web and digital as just that. Is there's all these organizations doing great work, and our work is meant to support and augment that and to kind of push them out into the world. And there's a lot of different ways to do that really effectively. And so, I mean, it's completely true that the nonprofit space has been severely impacted since this administration, and there's a lot of funding being pulled, and it's not an easy space to be in, but we've diversified enough over time that we have like a lot of for-profit organizations as well. There's also we also work with a lot of like foundations and philanthropies. There's a lot more like private dollars moving around, and community foundations that we've worked with and things like that. So we're just trying to find those spaces where like what we do can like really drive an organization forward.
Love that. Now, I know you are leaning heavily into AI.
Mm-hmm.
Who's driving that at your agency, and what's that impact for you as a company and as a leader?
Yeah. At the moment, I'm probably the main driver, and I'm working on how to sort of operationalize and kind of create more of a culture of exploration and building AI practices into our business. It's fun as a developer, my AI and like a lot of workflow automations that use AI and things like that are really exciting to me. I've actually been like vibe coding some apps and like dabbling back into this like coding space that I've had no ability to be part of for the last however many years because I'm too rusty. But it's really exciting because of the way I think about different like data sets aligning and different pathways through information, and also just like personally when I'm feeling really like just kind of scattered and having a hard time synthesizing things, just getting like that feedback and clarity from going back and forth with Claude or ChatGPT. Our devs are using it in a lot. The devs really naturally are really always lean towards experimenting, and they're constantly learning. Like nothing's ever stayed the same in dev for more than a couple of months, and so it's really natural for them. The pace is extremely fast right now of things moving. But we've been using Cursor AI as a team for the past year, so we're constantly thinking through like how the website development process is changing, how to better align like Figma to content creation and organization to actually building the site and kind of streamlining things. So that's really exciting, and the devs are kind of driving their own path in some ways in that with me kind of riffing on it with them. The designers just by nature are a little bit less like they're just not moving at the same pace because they aren't always like shifting and adapting as much as the developers are. So it's a little bit newer, but it's really cool. I've seen them just in the past like couple weeks be a lot more curious and experimental with different things. And Figma is driving a lot of different workflow shifts and it's actually like I see like the dev process is obviously gonna like the execution is just becoming faster and faster, and websites are just being rapid prototyped, and the actual like kind of coding is being consolidated, and we're becoming more like architects and engineers, which is kind of cool because that's where a lot of our devs are moving anyway. They're kind of past the point of just like punching and front end and API integrations and things. So that's great to see. But I see the devs thinking more about user experience because they're taking a step back and doing less like hands-on execution. And I see the designers thinking more like developers because they are like we were playing with Framer and just seeing what it was doing from Figma. And that means that the designers have to actually update our Figma files to be structured a little bit differently so that it's like more machine readable. And like I'm building some tooling that helps take like Figma design to more like a content generator and organizer that our clients can use where they can kind of create content outlines and then like have help like what kind of wireframing out the pages that aren't included in there and then have help like writing the content that's aligned with their content guidelines and their brand and everything. And so but in order to do that, the Figma like the notation in Figma and the meta and data in Figma has to actually like speak dev. And so but it's cool because like there's more of this like cross-pollination happening as we're dabbling in different spaces and thinking about different workflows and the way that things interface. And I think our team's always been pretty strong on kind of reaching over the fence of different departments and understanding how things work. But I'm seeing design and dev especially kind of move closer toward each other, which is kind of fun. So to answer your question, we're building the plane while we're flying it really, but we are trying to kind of create intentional spaces around like intentional policies internally about how we use AI and how we use, any client data, making sure it's protected and then also just creating a culture of curiosity and exploration, which we've always had, but really instituting that at a different level because, the pace of things moving right now is wild. And there is really a shift in the agency world towards like move, like experiment, be a little bit scrappier, figure things out, MVP stuff and just like keep, figuring out how to solve the problem and what's actually valuable and then kind of deal with the code debt a little bit later, which is not how everyone likes to work. But that's where like I come from, having been a self-taught coder. So I feel like we're kind of getting back to that a little bit and figuring out a happy medium.
Yeah. So you've got some guidelines, maybe a rough roadmap. Have you found a way to monetize AI as a delivery service, a service that you're delivering yet? Or is it more for internal automations and internal efficiencies, things like that?
Right now, we're just focusing more on internal tooling. And I think it's like such a wide world and like kind of the Wild West out there in terms of building things for clients. There's a lot we can do, but I'm just using ourselves as more of like a demo space to figure out what's reasonable, what's realistic. I do think there's so much opportunity in like the nonprofit space there's a lot of things that are adjacent to websites that involve like just different data sets being cleaned up or aligned or workflows being streamlined and this and that. And we could go in all sorts of directions with that. Often when we're building websites, we're building some sort of like API integration, which is not at all dissimilar to an AI optimized like workflow automation. So I think there's going to be a natural progression over time where we start to incorporate different tools or different systems or different add-ons as we go. But I think the heart of what we're going to be doing is making our workflows more efficient internally so that we can just provide more value within the same budget or do things faster or kind of shift more of our bandwidth and resources to strategic initiatives, and then the execution is faster.
And find more profitability, right? If you can do things more efficiently, do more projects, in a compressed timeline with more, with less, et cetera, there's more profitability. But a lot of shops I see in the not-for-profit and purpose-driven space, they're integrating like the digital transformation of like what you're saying is how do we help member engagement? How do we help with fundraising and capital campaigns and things like that? And how can AI help, move that stuff forward as well? So it's, like you said, it's websites, but it's digital things, and so there's a lot
Yeah.
of value there. Yeah.
Yeah. There's so much opportunity. I mean, my head is spinning with like that many ideas, but um I think the challenge in coming from a recent sort of agency meetup that was centered around AI, the challenge is really to focus on like what has the greatest value. There's a ton of opportunity. There's also um an insane level of adoption and then abandoning
Yeah.
different projects. And so
Yeah, the squirrely, the shiny thing for the shiny things. And somebody just mentioned an MIT report that said 95% of all AI projects just fail quickly because let's try this, doesn't work, But similar to you, I get that same endorphin rush as I did when I would like type something into Dreamweaver and see it live in a browser. When I do something in Make or Zapier and I see it like end-to-end work, I'm like, oh my God, I'm a developer, I'm a programmer. And so I get that same rush that you're talking about.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but and the other thing is like I don't want to reinvent all the wheels. There's so much being developed right now that there's a whole group that's AI for nonprofits that is led by a colleague of mine who was part of the B Corp space, Cheryl Conti, and she just wrote a book on it. And so we're also just trying to loop in resources that already exist. I'll share that you can share it in the show notes, but we want to like bring in tooling from partners, the more I'm building things, the more I'm remembering how many edge cases there are and how many outliers there are in everything you're building. And so I'm just figuring out what problems like make the most sense for us to solve, either for ourselves or for our clients, and for what reason, and then just leverage other things that are out there that help connect the dots. And I think that's part of our jobs too, is that we, as like experts in this space, even though we may not know a whole lot more than anyone else who's none of us are really experts on AI just yet. There's just too much to wrap our heads around, but we probably have we can be more trusted voices of like what's viable to use and what's reasonable and worth investing in. Like, I think there's a lot of like, if we're overwhelmed with it, you have to think like, what does the average client who's not so technical think? Like, some of them are probably just freaking out and tuning out half of it and abandoning it, or they don't understand if it's even safe to like OAuth something with Google, and they don't understand if it's worth paying for this service or that service. And so we're trying to like cut through the noise a little bit, just with like some trusted recommendations as well.
Yeah, that's got to be a special place to be when you're seen as an advisor to that audience of a client and a trusted advisor where, they come to you, we don't know what to do with this, or should we be doing this? And I mean, even like 10 years ago, I remember that being from an email marketing standpoint, we need to do email marketing. Who do we use? And, and so on this level where there's so much more at stake, to be able to be seen and trusted as that advisor is super valuable. And that's how you move upstream in your niche and get deeper with it. So there you go. I want to wrap up real quick with just a couple random fun and lighthearted questions. So get ready. Here we go. Put on your creative hat. So what's the most unusual place you've ever opened your laptop to get work done?
On the end of a dock in a remote bay. It's called the Bay of Dolphins in Panama. That's actually where I started Mangrove, and you could only get there by 20-minute boat ride. And I was
cool.
at a little eco lodge there with a guy who was developing for couch surfing, and worked there most days for the early days of Mangrove.
Oh, that sounds idyllic and beautiful. That's awesome. If you had to give a TED Talk on a topic outside of business or tech, what would it be about?
Oh my God. How not to get your kids' shoes on in the morning. I don't know. I am maybe how to be a creative parent who feels like they're failing most days, but figuring out some little pathways through it in the meanwhile. By no means an expert there, but can share some failings for sure.
Yeah, and I can guarantee from the slight little window I have from all the way over here on the East Coast, you're an amazing mom, and it's challenging for every parent. So the morning battle for school and shoes and food and all that, we all face it. So, yeah. Finally, what's one outdated piece of quote unquote common wisdom in our industry that you wish we'd all stop repeating?
Oh gosh. That's a good one. Nothing is coming to mind for me, but there's so many things flooding my brain right now. I can't think of anything good, but can I tell you later and you can add it in the show notes?
Perfect.
Right?
Yeah.
My brain's stalling out.
Yeah, that's fine. And I think a lot of what we do these days,
What's yours? How about that?
Common wisdom, probably something to do with being a generalist, right? I'd rather be all things to all people or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very sick of everybody telling me to niche down, but I think that's
Gee, what do you mean?
I know, I think it's actually a movement, but I don't love hearing that one.
Yeah.
So no, I get it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think common knowledge shifts so quickly in our industry that to say like this is something that needs to be forgotten or never said again, I don't know.
I know that's really because like a decade of it was just like flooded my brain, but I couldn't quite stop somewhere,
Yeah, we'll skip that one. We'll call that a flag. We won't use that one ever again. Well, Maiya, I am a huge fan of Mangrove, huge fan of you as a leader, a female leader in tech, and big fan of what you've been doing and continue to do. So I am grateful that you'd spend time with us today, and thank you for sharing your experience and everything that you've been able to impart on us with this episode today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's an honor.
Thanks again for tuning in to Agency Bytes. If you know someone with expert knowledge on a topic that agency owners would love to hear about, go to agencyoutsight.com/podcast-guest and nominate them.